You have heard it 1,000 times. In the past, people died young. In the Middle Ages, you were lucky to even reach 30. In ancient Rome, hitting 40 made you an old man. We picture our ancestors as worn out and dropping dead barely into adulthood. But this is honestly one of the most misunderstood facts in all of history. Because the truth is, if you lived in the ancient world, you actually had a very good chance of growing genuinely old. So where did this whole myth of dying at 30 even come from? The answer is hiding inside one sneaky little number. That number is called life expectancy. And it is true for most of history, the average life expectancy at birth really was somewhere around 30 to 35 years. So case closed, right? Everybody just died at 30? Well, no, because that number is an average. And it is an average that includes something absolutely brutal. A huge number of babies and young children who died very, very early in life. This right here is the key to the whole thing. In the past, childhood was terrifyingly deadly. Without vaccines, without antibiotics, and often without clean water, disease swept through the young. In many societies, something like a third or even half of all children died before they even reached the age of 5, and every single one of those tiny lives counts as a zero, or close to it, in the average. So when you average a big pile of zeros together with people who live to 70, you get a very misleading number, sitting right in the middle, around 30. So here is the absolutely crucial thing that the myth gets completely wrong. Life expectancy is not the same thing as lifespan. Those are two totally different ideas. That low average was dragged right down, almost entirely, by all the children who died. But if you were one of the lucky ones who survived those brutal early years, say, if you managed to make it to 15, then your future suddenly looked very, very different. You could realistically expect to live into your 50s, your 60s, or even well beyond that. And the evidence for all of this is honestly everywhere. Just look at the famous figures of the ancient world. The Greek philosopher Socrates was around 70 years old when he died. Plato reached about 80. The Roman Emperor Augustus lived to 75, and the great pharaoh Ramesses II is thought to have ruled all the way into his 90s. These people were not bizarre freaks of nature. Reaching a proper old age was completely normal, just as long as you first managed to survive being a child. And it goes back much further than that. Scientists have carefully studied modern hunter-gatherer groups, people who still live much like our ancient ancestors once did. And what they found is that, yes, many of their children do die young, but the adults who make it through that gauntlet very often live right into their late 60s and their 70s. The natural human lifespan, it turns out, has stayed roughly the same for a very, very long time. Old people are simply not a modern invention. In fact, ancient societies were absolutely full of old people, and they were very often the single most important members of the entire group. In a world with no books and no writing at all, an elder was a living library, holding decades of precious knowledge, stories, and hard-won survival skills inside their head. Gray hair meant wisdom, and it meant status. Far from being some rarity, the wise village elder is honestly one of the oldest and most respected figures in all of human history. So if it was not old age striking everyone down at 30, then what actually did kill grown adults back then? Well, plenty of things. Infections from small wounds that we would simply shrug off today. Terrible diseases like the plague and smallpox. Violence and war. Famine whenever the harvest failed. And for women in particular, one single danger stood high above all of the others: childbirth. For almost all of history, having a baby was one of the most dangerous things that a woman could ever possibly do. Without any modern medicine, a difficult birth could very easily turn fatal, and women had many children across their lives, facing down that same deadly risk again and again and again. This is a huge reason why women's average lifespans often looked even lower than men's. It was not old age at all. It was the sheer, raw danger of bringing a new life into the world. Now, there is one small grain of truth buried inside the myth. Ancient people very often did look older than their actual years. A life of hard physical labor, relentless sun, poor food, and badly worn-down teeth aged the human body incredibly fast. So a 40-year-old farmer might genuinely have looked 60 to our modern eyes. They may well have looked weathered and old, but they were still very much alive in there. and they very often had many decades left still to live. And here is something that genuinely surprises a lot of people. The absolute ceiling of human life has not actually shot upwards over the centuries. A healthy human body has always been perfectly capable of lasting well into its 70s and 80s. What modern medicine truly changed is not how long the very oldest people can possibly live. It changed how many of us actually get to reach that old age in the first place. We did not raise the ceiling at all. We simply stopped so very many people from dying young, far beneath it. And the ancient people knew all of this perfectly well themselves. Thousands of years ago, an ancient Hebrew psalm plainly declared that the length of a human life is 70 years, or 80 if you happen to be strong. 70 years. They were not describing some incredibly rare miracle here. They were simply describing what a full and a complete human life had always looked like, at least for those fortunate enough to actually reach the very end of it. So the whole idea that everybody just dropped dead at 30 is simply, plainly wrong. It comes entirely from confusing two different things and from forgetting the truly tragic number of children who never got the chance to grow up at all. Yes, the ancient world was far, far more dangerous than our own, especially for the very young. But it was absolutely not a world without any grandparents, without any wrinkles, or without long lives that were well and fully lived. It was completely full of them. So, did everyone really die at 30? No, not even remotely close. If you managed to make it through the deadly gauntlet of childhood, then you stood a very real chance of living a long and full life, of growing old, of telling your stories, and of meeting your own grandchildren. That famous little number was never really about a natural human lifespan at all. It was only ever a long shadow cast by the terrible loss of children. So the next time you hear that people used to just die at 30, now you will know the real and the far more hopeful truth. Like this video if it surprised you, and stay curious.